Hey there, Dr. Mark here. In today's video, I'm going to show you the exact steps to start working with a weight loss client, how to set them up on a fat loss plan with the exact tracking sheets and forms and templates to use, and how to structure their check-ins for best results. And today I'm showing you exactly how to get started using one of my own nutrition clients as an example. Let's dive in. Okay, so I have a client that wants to lose weight. Here's what I gathered from her intake form about what she wants to accomplish. Okay, so based on her intake form and her specific goals, the first thing that she said is, I really want to lose fat. I also got some baseline metrics about her. She's 5'7", she's 26, she's 134 pounds currently. She also mentioned struggling with consistency in her nutrition, and she wanted some strategies to put into action while she's traveling. This is the perfect client to show you how to set up a weight loss plan. And the first thing I need to do is to assess how much food she's currently eating. When it comes to fat loss, obviously being in a calorie deficit and consuming less energy than you're burning is going to be important. So let's talk about how to set up a deficit based on what she's doing right now. So the most important variable when it comes to fat loss is taking a closer look at the total amount of food she's consuming. Here are the steps that I'm going to take to set her up on a fat loss plan that will actually work. The first thing we're going to have her do is track her food. I want to take her food log or her food diary and turn it into objective numbers. We really want to gather how many total calories and where those calories are coming from, the macronutrients, so we can set her up on a plan. Got her tracking using macros. First, she was already using this tracking app when we first connected, which is amazing. It's one of the best tracking apps out there. And before I get too far today, if you haven't already checked out Macros First for yourself or for your clients, I'll show you some of the coaching features later on in this video as we set up her plan, but you gotta check out this app. You can go to the first link in my description below and get a completely free trial to the app and check it out. So what I had her do using the tracking app was pull 5 days worth of data and enter it in my assessment sheet. What I want to do here is take a look at what she's typically eating over the course of 5 days and get some averages so that I can show her what's holding her back from her goals based on what she's eating and set her up on a plan, or in this case, point out something that was surprising. Okay, so here I have the nutritional data for this weight loss client. We got 5 days worth of data, taking a look at, what was normal and normal levels. Keep in mind, this client had already been dieting for some time, then reached out for additional support, wanted some more guidance, wanted to keep things moving. I think I gathered that at this point, she maybe reached like a bit of a plateau after doing this for around 6 weeks. She originally body weight wise started at around 141. Now she's at 135, which is on pace for 6 weeks, around, 1 pound a week. So things are going well. What was surprising about this was that she had mentioned she wanted to be more consistent, but based on my view, she's already being very, very consistent, and her protein intake's in the great place. So after doing this process and taking a look at what clients are currently doing and presenting it to them thousands of times, generally things don't look usually this good. So let me tell you why. Protein intake wise, she's around 134 pounds. Her average for the week was 135 grams of protein. That puts her at 2.14 grams per kilogram of protein per day, which is amazing for someone looking to lose fat on a deficit. So, she spares the muscle that she already does have, helps her train, recover. It's in a good spot macronutrient wise. Calories as well, at 25 kcals per kilogram of body weight. Maintenance levels are typically between like 30 to 35. Within that range, she's already in a deficit, around a 20% deficit, which is why she's already lost 5-6 pounds. Things are in a good spot. I don't typically get to say that we don't change things up much, but in this case, when I, present this to her about what to do, it can feel a little bit, I wouldn't say, like a little odd, maybe not awkward, but a little odd to say that you don't need to change all that much up in this scenario, but she doesn't. We need to remain consistent, see where things are at, see how they continue to progress, because chances are she's still making progress. There's some tweaks we can make down the road, but for now, let's just see how things go and go from there. So in terms of starting levels for food and how to set out a plan, she's already on a deficit. We can see that, although we didn't see her weight drop through this process, but we're confident based on what she's reporting in the numbers, she's already on the deficit, so we can keep calories somewhat similar. And then from there, I would honestly start it off very, very similar. 135 grams of protein, 160 grams of carbs, 45 grams of fat, right for around 15-60 calories. Spend a week there, maybe more if things continue to move in the right direction. And this is where I would actually start her off. It's a really good starting place. There's going to be times where doing assessments, protein, people are under eating, not enough protein. People are really inconsistent from day to day. Those are some of the big trends. But in this scenario specifically, it's just, this looks really good. You're doing all the right things. Now you just need to continue on with my accountability, with my guidance. We'll put some things in place that make it easier for you to adhere to this stuff through time, which could be the tough thing. Maybe she's good right now. Maybe she has been good for a little bit, but she needs to continue to do that to reach her goals. That's where the power of coaching comes in. So in terms of where to start her off, that's where I would start her off. And that's what I'm seeing right now. Okay, so now she's all set up with her fat loss plan. Here's how I structured her weekly check-ins. Okay, once I have her set up with a plan, I'm gonna explain to her the coaching process and some expectations around how this is going to work. I explain this all during the onboarding process, which for me is going to be a simple email where I lay everything out. Now, one of the coaching features I like the most about Macros First is going to be the Google Sheets importer. I'm old school. I like using Google Sheets instead of coaching software. You probably do too, but it can be tedious to get your clients to manually transcribe their data into your sheet. Macros First has a way around this. Check it out. All you need to do is install the Macros First importer add-on on your Google Sheets and then connect your client's Macros First account to the sheet. They're going to need a premium account for this, which we'll touch on in a second. But then you can use this function to automatically import a bunch of data into your coaching sheet so the client doesn't need to. And then you just hit import and all the data shows up. And then you can schedule the daily imports, which means your clients are not going to need to take their data and manually enter it in the sheet. In the past, I've had clients do this mainly out of necessity, and I liked them reflecting on how their week went by entering in the data. But this is a great solution to use without having to resort to additional coaching software. Now, you do have to make some changes to my original tracking sheet to use it. Essentially, you just need the dates and the variables on either side of the cells that you'll import on. But if you want the exact sheet that I use for this, just comment sheet below in the comments and I'll make sure it gets over to you. Now I have this client all set up and I can start coaching her. Now at this point, I've done a few weekly check-ins with this client, so I want to share with you what we've discussed so far and how things are going. A few things about this client. When we started working together, she had already been dieting for around 6 weeks. She lost around 6 pounds, but things started to slow down. She had a really busy summer, but she just started adding back in resistance training. But during her first check-in, she followed the numbers to a T. Everything was extremely consistent and her weight stayed exactly the same, which can be frustrating when you're putting a lot of effort into things. So what I wanted to do here was, number one, make sure that she wasn't overly hungry, which she described that she wasn't. And I wanted to make some small tweaks to keep things moving. So what I did right off the bat was made a reduction in her food levels, coming mainly from carbs. We brought her calories down around 60 calories, which based on her overall food levels was a 5% calorie drop, coming mainly from carbohydrates. And then we brought her steps up to a daily target of around 12,000 steps every day. Despite her weight not moving at all in the first week, hanging out right around that 134, 135 mark, we saw quite a bigger drop in the second week. She came down to around 132, 133 pounds virtually overnight. And you got to keep in mind, she lost 2 or 3 pounds there as scale weight. Chances are she had been losing fat pretty consistently over the last several weeks, but it was just starting to show up on the scale right now. Sometimes when we make these changes, things speed up. It doesn't mean that she lost 3 pounds of fat. It just showed up on the scale that way. Now, remember from the beginning of this video, this client also said that she wanted to be more consistent with her nutrition, which based on our first few weeks together, it does seem like she's doing. So is that because she's being watched? Maybe, but that's okay. But she also wanted some strategies in place while traveling. And here are a few of the ways that we're tackling that through our correspondence. First off, she's tracking using Macros First, which has a fully verified food database. So as she's traveling and eating different foods out of the home, I know everything that she enters within the app is going to be more or less true. It's going to be accurate, especially compared to something like MyFitnessPal. As well as when you're traveling, you don't have as much control over your normal staples. So one feature that I suggested that she use is going to be the new AI search feature in Macros First. When she has potlucks or social events, or maybe maybe she's eating at her in-laws. It's not as easy to track everything. So she could just verbally describe what she's eating, get a good sense of what that is using this AI feature. It makes it really easy for an overall meal to speak what you're eating, get some data, track it, then forget about it and move on. Now, this is a premium feature of Macros First, but if you want to get a discount on your subscription, use the code Dr. Mark when it's time to pay, and you're going to get that 10% discount. As we already talked about today, this is a great tracking app for you and your clients. So check it out. It's well worth it. Now, you'll remember after that second week, the client's weight did drop relatively fast. And although she wasn't hungry, I did want to put some things in place that's going to make it easier for her to manage her hunger and energy levels and keep things progressing moving forward. So what we did was add in a once per week higher carb refeed. So what this day typically looks like is slightly less protein and more carbs overall, usually around 50 to 70 grams more carbs and slightly more fat. Typically we're working this up depending on where the client's at, closer to maintenance levels for one day. These days help for a few reasons. The additional carbs helps top up glycogen stores, so that improves energy and performance in training, which also helps manage appetite levels, but it also gives her a bit of a psychological break from dieting. Maybe you can work in a few higher carb foods that you typically wouldn't be eating. Now her weight might come up a little bit the next day because she's ate a bit more carbs, so water weight might come up a little bit. That is typical. So make sure as you're describing this to your clients, you fill them in on that dynamic can happen. But when I suggested this, she was completely on board and looking forward to working in the refeed. Remember, fat loss is a game of compromise. So there are things that they can work in, things that you need to avoid for a certain period of time for it to work. There's no good or bad foods, just better or worse choices, as well as some strategies that can be really helpful to set up a weight loss client on a plan. And that's it, folks. That's how you set up a weight loss program for a nutrition client. So check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video.